I am Mary Weaks-Baxter. I am Andrew Sherritt Professor at Rockford University in Rockford, Illinois, and I have been at Rockford for 30 years. And I teach courses in both writing and in literature. And I have a new book out that I'm really excited about. It has been, I guess, in many ways, a long time coming. My previous work has dealt in large part with Southern studies and Southern literature and what it means to be a Southern writer, what it means to be a Southerner. And as someone who left the South to move to the North, to Northern Illinois to teach, I have lived an interesting experience, I think. The book is very much about what it means to live on a border. In many ways, the image on the front of the book, too, shows a good deal, too, about perhaps how I feel about my experiences. I think many people go through experiences like this as they move from one place to another, or perhaps transition, actually, from one place in their lives to another. In many ways, I feel as if I live in three places rather than just one. I feel connected to the place that I came from. I feel obviously connected to the place that I live now in Northern Illinois, but I feel as if, too, that I'm living on the border, someplace in between those two places. And I think many people do experience this. This book is about the South in particular. It's about Southerners who left the South, and during the 20th century, millions of Southerners did leave the South for other parts of the country. Increasingly, there has been a turnaround so that Southerners are returning to the South in more recent years, but I was part of that out-migration of Southerners that was the largest movement of people from one place in the United States to another in the 20th century. And in large part, this is a book about navigating the line, trying to figure out who you are, what it means. I think it's interesting, too, that my experiences here in Northern Illinois, I have met Southerners who are displaced. I guess that's a strong term to use, displaced. But Southerners who are living outside of the South, for example, one of my former colleagues from the South had his son listen to tapes of Southerners so his son would not lose his Southern accent. I've had students from the South, too, who've told me, performing arts students in particular, who've told me that they need to lose their Southern accents in order to find jobs. For Southerners, too, I think there's a lot of baggage that you take with you when you move out of the South. For example, when I was a young child living in the South, there were still some parts of the South where there were segregated water fountains and restrooms. I mean, that history of what the South was, although the South has certainly made progress, there still are instances, for example, in Texas, a decision was just made on the state level that children in schools in Texas should be taught that slavery was one of the primary causes of the Civil War. I wanted to write this book, too, because it really deals with a very personal experience that I have lived. I do focus on particular text. I focus on narrative in particular, and narrative in the sense of stories that are told. Stories, though, that we can find in all sorts of texts, not only written texts, but also in visuals. In photographs and paintings and music, too, and the importance of thinking about how narrative can impact our lives. Narratives can be scripts for living our lives. For example, there is quite a good deal of music, of blues music and country music about Southerners who are making the transition out of the South. And for many Southerners, listening to music helped them make that transition and feel as if they weren't alone. And borders, though, are very much in our contemporary world today and contemporary politics. And I think the book is significant, too, because of the issues that have come to the forefront nowadays. Borders can be used for divisive purposes too. Narratives about people who cross borders, about migrants taking jobs from people who are already there, or migrants bringing violence into a region or a nation too. These are significant issues that we're dealing with today too. So I think that the book is very pertinent in that respect also. I would like to add too that in looking at the cover, although I do see myself as like on a border, the American flag over here, the Confederate flag over here, but the Confederate flag, I guess, dealing somewhat with the anxieties that a Southerner might feel about the Southern past that they carry with them. But also too, this flag ended up on the cover because I live in one of the towns outside of Rockford, one of the smaller towns, and as I drive into town, there was a flag that was flying at one of the houses, and it flew there for several months, and it was this divided flag with the American flag on one side and the Confederate on the other. And that disturbed me. It disturbed me because perhaps what it says too about our national politics, perhaps it says something too about white supremacy and the white supremacy that was connected to the Confederacy and to the Old South. And it disturbed me to be seeing a flag like this. I talked with my students in one of my classes. This came up into the conversation because of a text that we were reading, and my students had seen the same flag being flown in the Rockford area. So I think in part too, not only is this my attempt to look at life on the border, but also dealing with perhaps in some ways some of these things that I wish had been left in the past. The parts of the South that I obviously want to push away. But some of these things I'm seeing coming to the forefront today in our recent politics. So I hope you will pick up a copy of the book. It does deal with a number of different literary texts and visual and musical texts too that I think make for an interesting read, but I guess I'm in large part proud of the fact that I am dealing with some issues that I think not only are important for us to be discussing today, but I think that they will be issues that will be at the forefront for quite some time in the future.